Hello. This video is going to be a bit different than the last ones that I did. It's a nice, cold, snowy day here where I live. The snow has been covering everything for about a week. And sometimes when it's cold like this, I just like to come outside and think. Lately I've been thinking about, as you may have guessed from the title of this video, video games. And basically just what they mean to me as a person and how they've sort of been with me for most of my life. So I guess I should start with the very first video game that I ever played, which was Super Mario World. It was back, I lived in Texas a long time ago. House burnt down, so that was fun. But my neighbor had Super Mario World. And my first experiences with games like that and a few other things that I played here and there was that games felt very ethereal. They didn't really feel real. And I don't know how to best describe that. Look at this ice off my balcony. It's chilling my hands. That's better. It felt very ethereal. That's the best word I could really think of to describe it. Like, playing these games didn't really feel real. It was like I was transported to some bizarro world temporarily. It wasn't until I was maybe 7 or so that I finally owned a video game and the realization of it set in. I think the first games I owned were Rayman 2 and Croc 2, the former being much better than the latter. Of course, as a kid, I loved both of them, but nowadays, I don't think you could pay me money to play Croc 2 again. But Rayman 2 I'll boot up every so often, because that game still holds its weight. Rolling back a little bit, video games have always been special to me as sort of a way to cope with certain feelings or certain events that have happened in my life. I'm just putting my hands in my pockets. I don't know what to do with these things. Like I had mentioned, back when I lived in Texas, our house burnt down. I wasn't there when it happened. I was up in Maine celebrating the holidays with one side of my family. And my aunt would bring over her NES from time to time, just for us to, sort of have fun with. And I was playing the original Super Mario Bros. When my mom called me down and called down my sister. I was only around 5 at the time. Basically explained to us that we couldn't go back home, that it was all gone. And I didn't really understand, because it's a lot for a 5-year-old to take in, that everything you had or loved and cared for, all your, little stuffed animals, your actual pets, everything that you have is gone. And I remember my mom told me that, and I sort of waddled back upstairs. I probably had a blank look on my face, and I just sat down in front of the TV again, and I just played Super Mario Bros. And I think that was my first instance I can remember of a game helping me cope with something that it was still ethereal at the time. The game didn't really feel real. The situation I was in didn't really feel real, but it still helped, and it gave me something to take my mind off of it, and it lightened the blow. Now, moving forward again, when I actually owned games and they became real, they weren't really this strange, ghostly entity anymore, I just got so immersed. The first time that I played Rayman 2, you'd have been hard-pressed to get me away from the screen. It was like every new world and every new encounter was like my brain being overloaded. It's just, when you're that young and you've never played something like that before, it really is just, it's like an adventure. It's getting just trapped in a world that someone else made and overcoming it and making it your own in a way. And I think that's held a special place to me as a feeling growing up and playing games. Because this world that we're in has always felt strange to me. It's never felt like I'm supposed to be here. And that's not said in a way like I want to take myself out of the world, which I don't. This isn't a cry for help or anything like that. I don't want to worry any of my friends or family watching, because I'm pretty content with where I am in life right now. But that feeling's always there, that I'm not supposed to be here, that I was supposed to end up somewhere else. And I think when I get lost in a game, it's like for a few moments, a few days, few hours, as long as it lasts, I can be somewhere else. I can be in some other world that someone else made. And, maybe that's where I'm supposed to be at that place and time. Games have really helped me a lot coping with that emotion and just losing myself somewhere else. But sometimes games, they sort of wake me up to things in reality. Makes me think of the first game that ever just made me outright, break down, head in hands, sobbing, which was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, of course. I mean, I know I'm not the only one who's cried at that game. But I look back at it now, and I feel like I cried for a very specific reason. Of course, the picture of Pikachu crying was very sad when you're getting whisked back to the human world at the end of the game. But it wasn't just that feeling of the partner's loss and the sad music and all the build-up and everything. It was that I had to go back. I had to go back to this world that I didn't feel like I was supposed to be in. And that was a hard pill to swallow from just a game telling me that. I'd come to this new world, I'd made all these new friends. I played that game at a time in my life where I was very lonely. I was transitioning between elementary and high school, and I was having a rough time. And I didn't want to go back, I didn't want to leave this world that I just spent God knows how many hours in. But it was a lesson, in a way. You can lose yourself in a game and get as immersed as you possibly can. But eventually you have to go back. You have to come back. And while, of course, in that game, you come back to the Pokemon world, the human world doesn't keep you. That lesson still stuck with me. And the post-game doesn't carry the same emotional weight as the base game does. And I think part of that is because you know that you didn't come back. The character did. I didn't. And it was a wake-up call. And games have given me better lessons than that. Usually every time a game gives me a lesson, hard or not, I'm usually sobbing. I sobbed at Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2. The explorers of time and darkness and sky and all those. It's the same thing. It's that feeling of not wanting to leave. Although the context in those games made it hit a little less. It wasn't quite as hard as the way Rescue Team hit. But oh, did I sob again when I played Super. Because in Super Mystery Dungeon, I made the mistake of naming my partner after my boyfriend at the time. And we were going through a bit of a schism by the time I finished that game. And I don't know if, I don't know if everybody's played that game, but the whole twist at the end is that your partner gets taken away, not you. And you have to cope and live without them. And just a couple days after I completed the game, my partner left. And the post-game in that game is you trying to get your partner back. And you do eventually do it. But I guess they ran out of story writing juice for the post-game Because when you get your partner back, it feels very hollow. It doesn't really feel like they're the same. It doesn't really feel like the bond that you built up with them throughout the entire game is there anymore. And that was another time a game had a wake-up call for me. Because I could really empathize with the main character. You know, I wanted my partner back. You know, I missed him. But the game made me realize that even if, you know, they stayed in my life and maybe we could become just regular friends, it was just going to be hollow. And I was right. We were connected like 8 years later, and it was just hollow. But in a way, that game prepared me for that. It just goes on this long list of games helping me cope. But I think the hardest that I've ever sobbed at a game, not Undertale, that one got me pretty hard. It's probably Lisa. And I feel like that game's more niche nowadays, but it was a pretty popular indie game a few years ago. It's about an apocalyptic world where there's only men left. And this one man who has trauma in his life about being unable to protect his sister from an abusive father, he finds the one girl left in the world, and he raises her. And it's a loving raising, but it's also a bit tough because she lives in a world where there's only men. And the main character, Brad, knows that if any of these groups of men were to get to her, there's a chance something very bad would happen. Which does, from time to time in the game. She has a rough time. And as time goes on and Brad searches for her because she goes missing at the start, he finds her a few times and she doesn't really want anything to do with him. There's a distance that's grown between them for one reason or another. And I didn't really relate to the reasons for the distance. But in an expansion to the game where you play as Brad's adoptive daughter, Buddy, that's her name, Buddy, not Lisa, there's a part where you're basically tripping balls. And by this point in the game, also, I'm sorry for spoilers, but the game's like 10 years old, so, it's tough. But by this point in the game, Brad's mutated into a monster due to this weird antipsychotic drug that everybody takes. And Buddy takes this drug at one point and ends up tripping and seeing all these things, and there's a moment where, Brad is there in his monstrous form, and Buddy just sees him as he was. Now, during the time that I was playing this, I was coming to terms more with being gay, which I had, bottled up for a lot of my early life. And my mom accepted it mostly right away, but my dad always seemed a bit odd. And it created, a schism between us. And it's tough, when you suddenly have like distance with your parents, and it's not from anything you could have controlled. It's not from anything you could change. It just happened. And I remember playing that fight, and it was playing a tearjerker of a song. This literally just called "He's My Dad." And I just sobbed. Because I thought about it, and it's like, there's that schism, there's that distance between you. But, he was still my dad. It wasn't like he disowned me or anything like that. It was just awkward. But he was still my dad. He was still the guy who put everything into raising me. And I kind of related to Buddy right there in that moment. I had to stop playing. I could barely see my screen. She probably felt the same way. So, Brad was her dad. Maybe times where they disagreed or things they could never see eye to eye on. But he still, cared no matter what. I started talking more to my dad again after that. It took him a while, but I think he accepts me now. If I hadn't played that game, there still might have been that distance there. And I would have had to live my whole life with that. And one more tearjerker story about games and what they mean. It's when I played Omori. Pretty late into life. And I didn't cry at the usual scene everybody cries at. Oh, Flex, I'm so strong. That scene didn't get me. Which was the duet where Sonny finally, accepts his trauma and he plays the violin again. Sorry again, spoilers, game's old. I mean, moderately old. If you haven't played it, sorry. Well, the scene that got me was when you finally get all of your childhood friends back together. And you put the pictures back in your scrapbook. So all your memories that you had when you were a kid. And it was again during a time in my life where I was in transition between one thing or another. And I didn't really have any friends close by. I'd moved away. And that scene helped me sort of accept that I might not see them again. My childhood, was over. It's long, long over at that point. But it still happened, you know. I still have those memories in here. And all that joy. And even if I wasn't feeling it right then and there, it's still there, There's a reason to keep going on. And I related to Sonny too as a character, that he made this whole world in his head because he didn't feel he didn't feel it was his, he was in the right place in the real world. Now, that was partly due to trauma, but it could have just been an inherent feeling too. He just needed an escape. But there were still things in the real world that needed doing. And he still needed to exist. It's crazy to think, too, of just how long I've been playing games, and I've been having those escapes and just these brief detachments from reality that just give me peace. Whether that peace sometimes ends, so I get reminded of what's going on, or I think the whole reason I wanted to make this video, so I kind of just wanted to put something real out there. I know there are a lot of other people like me who maybe don't feel this feeling to the same intensity, but where games are an escape from what's going on in the world. And with all the negativity in gaming right now, there's so many people whining, complaining about this and that. I think we need to take a step back and remember what games can mean to people. I saw some video the other day. I didn't even watch it. The title alone pissed me off. It was like, you should uninstall the latest Pokemon game. So when ZA had come out. And I just thought to myself, well, I don't really play Pokemon anymore. I haven't played it since Sun and Moon. But how can you say something like that? Because I'd been across, a bunch of sites, Blue Sky, not as much Twitter, I don't really use that anymore, but Blue Sky, looking on Discord, Telegram, of so many people who were just so happy with that game. And, being able to take pictures with their Pokemon and make them do cute things, and the game wasn't for me. But I knew that everyone who was getting up to that just for just a brief moment in the world as it is could just escape. They could just feel the joy of being in another world and being with all their critters and taking pictures of them. And even if I didn't necessarily like the game, the idea of trying to control people or tell them to uninstall, and I know it's just rage bait. It's just clout chasing words, buzzwords. Whether the person truly believed that or not, truly believed that people shouldn't uninstall a game, it just really stuck with me. That we live in this world where there's so few sources of escape and ways to find happiness. And there are people that say, that they play games and they love games and this and that, and they still try to convince you to take that happiness away from yourself. And I hope through the emotions I've showed in this video that games are good. You should never tell somebody to not play one, unless it's having a really bad effect on their life. Like I got addicted to League of Legends one time. Everyone telling me to stop playing, good on them. They were looking out for me. Different scenario though. That was thousands upon thousands of hours of time, not a little 30 to 50 hour game you can pick up and put down. But I just want more positivity about gaming. I don't want people going around telling people to uninstall things. I'm getting sick of criticism that's just shallow and people just yelling and being angry because they just don't enjoy something that maybe just isn't something they were ever going to enjoy. We need to remember that games have different impacts on different people. Things just resonate with you. And sometimes they don't. I had a friend who wanted me to play One Shot for the longest time. And cute game, really nice game. I enjoyed it. Didn't cry. I know a lot of people who that game really got them. But it just didn't resonate with me. And that's okay. Because there was somebody out there that game helped. And even if I hated the game, even if I thought it was horrible, I'd tell people to not play it? No. If they came to me and they asked me, what do you think of this game? I'd be like, I didn't like it. You might. It just didn't vibe with me. I wish that idea was more common. Because you never know when a game is going to change somebody's life. Or it's going to make them think a different way. Or it's going to help them through something. And so being so negative about them doesn't help anybody. You could be denying somebody something that really helps them in life. And I can always appreciate games for that, even the ones that I'm not too fond of. And I'll still love those games just the same. Because I love that they bring joy to people. I love that they help people cope with what's going on in the world. And as long as there's games out there that are made with passion, I know a lot of people are getting scared of that going away due to AI, but it's not going to go away. There's always going to be games out there made with real heart, made by people who have felt things and want other people to feel things. There's always going to be games that help people cope, that make people happy, that make people cry. And as long as there are always games like that, they'll always have a place in my life. And I'll always love them.